Welcome back. We're on deck. Prep test 86. It's the second logical reasoning section. And here we're going to start with question number 8. The government's prohibition of testing is most at odds with which one of the following principles? So you've got to stop for a second. The issue is a little, not the most common. So it's a principal issue, that is common. And the principle is going to be in the answer choices. What we're looking to solve is a principle that doesn't justify the example. That's, as they say, it's at odds with it. So if the principle were adhered to, we would have a different outcome. So let's see what we have here. Quartz Brook Farms wanted to test all of its cattle for a rare disease so it could export beef to a country that requires such testing. So just stop for a second. I mean, it's regular language, right? So we have this farm, and what they want to do is test all of its cattle for a rare disease so that they could export that beef to a country that requires such testing. Okay, I got it. And that's just a fact. That's part of the DNA. However, the government of Q's country, Quartz Brook's country, the government of that country, prohibited Quartz Brook, from testing its cattle. So the government said, no, you can't test the cattle, on the grounds that there is no scientific evidence that the risk posed by the disease justifies such testing, okay, and that the public could be misled into thinking that the testing was scientifically warranted if Quartz Brook performed the test. Again, that last sentence, it's not that the words are difficult, but it's a long run-on sentence, and if you're concerned about time, you're not going to digest everything they wrote. So now I'm looking for principle. I mean, I get what happened here, right? That the farm was going to test all of its cattle. So why are you testing all of your cattle? Because the disease is rare. And the farm says, well, I'm testing all of this cattle because I want to send it to Canada, for lack of another, right? And Canada requires testing. Okay. But then our government, the United States government, comes in and says, no, we're prohibiting you from doing that testing. And then they explain why, right? They're saying, one, we're prohibiting it because the risk doesn't justify it. There's no scientific evidence. There's no scientific evidence that the risk of disease justifies that testing. But there's a second ground, and the second ground is basically you're going to scare the living shit out of everybody. You know, they're going to hear that you're testing for this, and then, you know, so, you know, they're going to be misled into thinking that it was scientifically warranted. Okay. Now, the principle is going to elevate this, right, to a more general statement, and we want a principle at odds with what we were just told. Okay, here's what A says. A says, governments can rightly require product testing deemed necessary to protect public safety, yep, but cannot rightfully prohibit testing even if such testing is not justified by the risk involved. And A is the answer. And again, I don't get, you'll do what you do. It's a psychometric test. They're not giving you enough time. They are not giving you enough time to read B, C, D, and E if you're going to reach your optimum score. I mean, A is just so clear. So now I'll read B, C, D, and E for the purposes of video, but that's it. So since A is at odds with the principle, with the actual example, these will not be at odds with it. So what does B say? B says, government should seek to determine when product safety testing is justified by the risk posed, and should provide this information to companies that are considering such testing. I don't know that I'm giving any guidance on that from this example. C, so if this is a principle, a government should not allow a company to perform unnecessary product safety tests if that company is doing so will give consumers the impression that such tests should be performed. Well, that's not at odds with this. That's perfectly congruent with what the example is. We shouldn't perform tests. G, a government should not spend taxpayers' money performing product safety tests if the risk posed by the products does not justify the expense of the test. Well, how is that at odds with this? Right? It's perfectly congruent with it. E, it is fair for a country's government to require foreign companies to test the products they export to that country, so long as it requires domestic companies to perform the same tests. And again, I don't see how that's inconsistent. Let's break that down. It's fair for a country's government to require foreign companies to test the products they export to that country, okay, so long as it requires that domestic companies to perform the same test. So again, I'm not seeing how that is at all inconsistent with the example that's given. So the answer on 8 is A for I was going to say A for Oscar. That's not right. A for Augustus. Question number 9. The officer manager's argument is most vulnerable to criticism on which one of the following grounds? Okay, it's a flaw. So I'm reading for the flaw. Manager says, every vacation an office worker takes significantly reduces the psychological exhaustion experienced on the job. Got it. Therefore, to reduce the amount of psychological exhaustion as much as possible over the course of a year, office workers should divide their vacation time into several short vacations spaced throughout the year rather than into 1 or 2 long vacations. Why? What evidence have you given me that several short vacations reduces psychological exhaustion more than 1 or 2 long vacations? So, I mean, the flaw to me just jumps out at this is you've given me no evidence of psychological exhaustion being more effectively addressed by several short vacations than by 1 long vacation. I don't have the words, but that's where they're going. So that's all I'm reading for is when did we get there? A is the flaw that it takes for granted that each short vacation taken by an office worker during a year reduces the psychological exhaustion experienced on the job by an equal amount. It doesn't make any such assumption. You know, it's not that each 2-week thing is exactly equal. No. B, it overlooks the possibility that there are methods office workers can employ to reduce the amount of psychological exhaustion experienced on the job that are as effective as taking vacation. That's going outside the contours of the argument. This argument is the short ones are better than the long ones, but you never told me why. C, it overlooks the possibility that individual office workers may differ substantially in the extent to which taking vacations reduces the amount of psychological exhaustion they experience on the job. Again, that's not really reaching the issue. That the issue is why are short better than long, and that's what you got to solve, and C doesn't. D, it fails to consider that for office workers, the total amount of vacation time taken over the course of a year may have a much greater effect on the amount of psychological exhaustion experienced on the job than does the number of vacations taken during the year. Well, that's still not getting me the difference between short and long vacations. Again, let me stay on D a little bit here. That you say it fails to consider for office workers that the total amount of vacation time, so 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, total amount, not whether you're taking it in longer or shorter periods, right, may have a greater effect. So that's not the argument. E, it fails to consider that a long vacation may reduce the psychological exhaustion of an office worker's experiences on the job much more than a short vacation does. And that, of course, is the answer. And if E had been A, I would be saying at A, pull the trigger and get out of there. E is clearly the answer. So that's question number 9. Question number 10, which one of the following is an assumption required by the argument? Okay, so now I'm in assumption mode. A traditional view of Neanderthals is that they lack the ability to think symbolically. Okay, that's you're describing to me that is what is attributed to the Neanderthals. Next sentence. However, recent evidence suggests this view is mistaken. So the second sentence is the argument's conclusion. It is a mistaken view that the Neanderthals lack the ability to think symbolically, from which you can deduce that the Neanderthals had the ability to think abstractly. To think here, they're using the word symbolically. So that whatever follows has got to justify that, and the assumption is that whatever follows is what it constitutes symbolic thinking. Okay, here goes. Using an innovative new technique, researchers established that a cave painting in northern Spain was created at least 40,800 years ago. So we have a cave painting that we found. It is therefore likely that the painting was made by a Neanderthal. So you're saying it was likely to be made by a Neanderthal. Then you must be saying that that cave painting, because again, you have to read the whole argument in context. It's DNA, you know. And so you got to go back. So wait. But why in the third sentence, right, are we talking about this cave painting? And the answer is we're talking about this cave painting because it's evidence of the Neanderthal's ability to think symbolically. And that's what's assumed, that that cave painting is evidence of the Neanderthal's ability to think symbolically, and I don't have their words, but that'll be their answer. Okay. A. Neanderthals are known to have possessed the manual dexterity required to create cave paintings like the one in northern Spain. They don't have to be known to it. That they could have it, not be known to have it. B. No species of hominoid other than Neanderthals inhabited any part of Europe 40,800. You know, that's not. There could be other hominoids running around. C. The ability to create cave paintings, like the one in northern Spain, indicates the ability to think symbolically. Since you're saying the Neanderthals did that, right? And you say to me your conclusion is, right, that the view is mistaken, that they could not think symbolically. So again, when you say the view is mistaken, is wrong, right? That they could not think symbolically, then you were saying they are thinking symbolically. That's the argument's conclusion. The rest of the argument is there to explain the conclusion. You explain that they can think symbolically by pointing to this cave painting. So the answer is going to be C. Again, I would not be reading past C, but we're doing a video. D. The recent evidence regarding the cave painting in northern Spain is the first evidence to suggest that Neanderthals possessed the ability to think symbolically. Why does that have to be the first evidence? It doesn't have to be that. It's not, you know. E. Any species of hominoid that cannot create cave paintings must lack the ability to think symbolically. So let's try that again. Any species of hominoid that cannot create cave paintings must lack the ability to think symbolically, and that statement need not be true. So the answer to number 10 is C for Caligula, and we're going to hold it there.